Simply Scuba presents the Deco Stop Podcast.
Hi everybody, welcome to Simply Scuba and welcome to the Deco Stop Podcast. I'm Mark, I'm still by myself. We do have some plans on sort of replacing Sean, as it were, and getting a second presenter for this, but obviously it takes time to organise bits and bobs, so fret not. Eventually you'll hear the comforting tones of someone else's voice shortly. But yeah, this week we've got some website updates, we've got some special offers on the Simply Scuba website, as well as final shipping dates if you want to get gifts before Christmas. Some social channel updates, just what's going on and what's going to happen over the next week or so. The shows that are going live this week. We've got some news, 2 new interesting documentaries on Disney Plus that are definitely worth checking out, as well as some news stories on Divernet, a scuba diver discovering 2 sort of bodies that have been missing since the year 2000, as well as the Manatees off the coast of Florida. They've got plans to help them. My product of the week, and of course this week's question. But first off, on Simply Scuba website updates. So first of all, we have a limited time offer on the Garmin Descent dive computers. So this is a winter offer specifically from Garmin. They're offering a free HRM Pro, which is one of those heart rate monitor belts, but it's quite a fancy heart rate monitor belt. It does more than just measure your heart rate. You can take it swimming, cycling, running. It's got like accelerometers in it. So as you're running, it can sort of measure your stride and all sorts of clever things to do with like your gait and your sort of running performance, and then you can connect it to an app and it can actually give you tips on how to run more efficiently or something. Clever stuff. It's waterproof down to 5 atmospheres, which is like 50 meters. So yeah, this is it's worth or it has a recommended retail price of just under £120. So yeah, for a limited time, this runs up until Christmas Eve, so the 24th of December. If you buy a Garmin Descent Mark II or a Mark II S dive computer from us at Simply Scuba, you're going to get one of these absolutely free. I don't know if this applies to sort of countries abroad. I know it's definitely here in the UK, but I can't promise the offer sort of runs to other countries. But yeah, that's a very nice sort of winter gift from Garmin. We also have 15% off of the Paralens Vaquita dive camera. So this is a camera specifically for scuba diving. You can mount it on your mask to get that sort of POV shot, but it also has a built-in depth sensor so that as you go down deeper, it actually auto color corrects itself based on the depth, so your footage sort of doesn't just become blue. It has that dynamic color correction software on the inside, which is very clever. We've worked out our final shipping dates if you want to get a gift in time for Christmas. If you order it by 9 p.m. On Wednesday, the 22nd of December, with the next day delivery option, you should get it before Christmas. That is for mainland UK, obviously. Outside of that, we can't really promise anything because of sort of customs and shipping and all that kind of stuff. So if you are ordering from outside of the UK, it's best to order as soon as possible to get it in time for Christmas. But yeah, for everyone in the UK, 9 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday, the 22nd of December, and you should. No promises, we can't promise with these kind of things, but should ideally get it before Christmas. And we still have our extended returns running up until the 16th of January. So yeah, if you're ordering something as a gift and it's sized, or you're not sure they're going to like the color, then yeah, you still have a few weeks or a couple of weeks after Christmas to sort of get it back to us with no issues. Yeah, that's it for the website. We obviously have our gift ideas, so if you're struggling to come up with any kind of ideas, then yeah, head over to the website. We've broken them down into different sort of price brackets and things, just to make your life a little bit easier. But yeah, head over to simplyscuba.com. For social channel updates, looking at YouTube, the new shows Scuba Tips, the Top Tip Tuesday videos, and the Google questions have been going very well. Scuba Tips on a Tuesday, so that's very quick, short, sort of punchy videos. We filmed a whole bunch of them over at the beach, which is why the quality is a little bit different, but we were doing some guerrilla style filming. But yeah, they're sort of very quick sort of videos with just lots of little tips that I could think of off the top of my head. We filmed a whole bunch of them, as I said, so they're all sort of filmed up until like January. But I'm now sort of filming newer ones. So yeah, come January, February time, you'll start to see it change. I've gone from the beach to me sort of in a sweater and a hat. So, but yeah, if you want tips on anything, or if you have any tips for any other scuba divers, just pop them down in the comments below to help others out. And Google questions. So this is a new one. This is Sean's idea, and it's pretty cool, and it's quite good fun to film as well. And it's basically where I start off with a really basic question, and I type it into the top of Google. And then Google comes up with similar questions, and I basically answer those, which is good fun. On Sunday, we've got one on dive computers. So I just typed in scuba dive computer or something and just answered those questions. And the Tuesday top tips next Tuesday, or this Tuesday, is going to be all about snorkels. I like a good snorkel. I don't always have one attached onto my mask, but they are very useful, mainly on the surface, but they are useful. And there are some useful tips on that video. So yeah, definitely check them out. And on to scuba news and things that have piqued my interest this week. So there have been 2 new documentaries on the Disney Plus channel streaming service, whatever it's called. I'm not sure if this is global, but it's definitely here in the UK if you have Disney Plus. You have one that's called Becoming Cousteau, and that was a fascinating documentary all about Jacques Cousteau and sort of his life. And I think they did it very, very well, where it sort of starts off and it goes through his lifetime, and when he joined the military he wanted to become a pilot, and then he had an accident, and then in the physiotherapy afterwards he joined up with a couple of spear fishermen to do some like hydrophysical therapy in the water, and that's where he kind of fell in love with the water and then carried it on that way. Fascinating, and they don't pull any punches. There's sections on it where they developed the first aqualung and they were testing it, and they were diving deeper. They were trying to go down to 100 meters, and one of the test divers died. You actually see some footage of that, so do be aware when you're going into this. They do touch upon some of the things that he did, and of course later regretted in sort of filming the Silent World, and where they could have sort of swept a lot of it under the rug and just like skipped over it. They do touch upon it, which I think they did very, very well, very tastefully. There was a lot more that they could have used, but they didn't use it all. They just used snippets, which is important. And then, of course, it goes on to the section where he goes on to sort of regret sort of some of the things, just because it was not the dumb thing at the time, but it was just we didn't know any better back in those days. But now now that we feel bad about it, we've progressed, obviously. So yeah, and then it goes into his later life, and yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I did learn some new things about him and his family. So yeah, it is interesting, and it's nice to see the footage of scuba diving back in those days, where very few people were doing it, and what he did to sort of help out, and how his views changed over time was interesting to see. So yeah, I definitely sort of recommend checking it out. The other one that I think was released around the same time, if not at the same time, on Disney Plus was The Rescue. So this is the National Geographic documentary on the Thai cave rescue effort. There is I think they're making a Hollywood film about it that's due to be released in the next year or two. This is using existing footage taken by some of the divers and of course news reports at the time. Interviews with the actual people, the scuba divers, the British cave explorers, and yeah, again, fascinating to watch. I mean, I followed it quite closely as it was happening day by day, and this kind of does the same. It starts right at the beginning, and it sort of shows you the cave layout and sort of how and why they sort of ended up in there and trapped where they were, and then the procedures that happened, and day by day, and they sort of break it down, and it was fascinating to watch. And again, I'd learned new things about sort of what happens. So yeah, definitely, and it'll probably put you off entering certain caves in the future. It'll definitely make you think twice, especially sort of cave diving. But yeah, very fascinating watch. So if you do have Disney Plus, definitely check out The Rescue. Yeah, I've been waiting. I think it has been shown in cinemas, but I've been waiting for it to come onto some kind of streaming service that I could sort of watching on, and yeah, Disney Plus in the UK definitely has it. And on to actual news, as it were, just things that have happened this week or things that have been reported this week. The first one is the Resurrection of Divernet. So this comes from Scuba Diver magazine, and who previously were sort of two separate organisations, but yeah, Divernet. You've probably seen their websites. They have a lovely website that's a big sort of online resource for scuba divers with all sorts of news about latest events, upcoming events, as well as sort of gear, tips, and all that kind of stuff. But they the company that's sort of ran Divernet, the diver group, it gets very complicated. A lot of our magazines have very similar names. But yeah, Divernet was run by the Diver Group. They went into liquidation mainly because of COVID-19. So Rourke Media, who run the Scuba Diver magazine brand, I've worked with them before. They're lovely people, and they actually announced that they purchased Divernet and the website. So they're sort of resurrecting it, bringing it back. So you're going to start to see some new content coming out of Divernet. Yeah, nice story. Apparently they've been running since 1996, and yeah, it was COVID that kind of knocked them down. But yeah, now that you should start to see some new content coming out of Divernet soon, and that's coming out of Rourke Media. The next news story comes from the US and Tennessee, I think. This was a scuba diver who's basically solved a missing persons case after 21 years. So this is Jeremy Sides. He runs the YouTube channel Exploring with Nug, where he basically scuba dives rivers and things and just finds stuff that people have lost. And yeah, he was diving in a river in Tennessee, and yeah, came across a car, which is pretty cool. That's quite a big find for them. But then discovered that there were actually bodies inside of it, so he contacted emergency services. Now I don't know if the authorities have confirmed whether it's these two, but they strongly believe that it's teenagers Erin Foster and Jeremy Betchel. And they basically went missing in April 2000, so 21 odd years ago. The local police have written it off as a cold case. Had no idea. They were last seen in Foster's 1998 Pontiac Grand Am, and yeah, police investigations just had nowhere else to go, and they just wrote it off until Jeremy Sides managed to find the car, and yeah, fascinating. If you are in a similar situation, you're diving and you come across something like this, do your best to mark the location, send up a DSMB and attach it to some part of the wreck or whatever it is you find, or near to it, just so that emergency services can find it a little bit easier. But yeah, well done, and yeah, fascinating that we can sort of help to close that missing persons case. And finally, we're going over to Florida, where the manatees, who have been suffering quite a lot in the sort of past year or two, there's been a new development in that they're basically saying that certain organizations are planning to and have had the green light to provide food as needed at a key location on the state's east coast, where these manatees usually cluster when water temperatures start to drop. Now, this is all down to at least a year ago. They've recorded a lot of runoff from, and they think a lot of it is human waste and fertilizer has been sort of running off into the oceans, and this has caused an algal bloom. So algae, of course, loves all of these nutrients, and it blooms. It creates this kind of carpet, but it blooms on the surface, which of course blocks the sunlight underneath it. So the seagrass that grows on the bottom that the manatees eat, they don't get enough sunlight, so there's no food for them. And a lot of manatees have been dying recently, and it's to the point where people are very worried that they might all die in this area, basically. So they're saying any so that they do still see, they're very skinny. They look very underfed. They're disorientated. So yeah, they've basically been sort of considering feeding them, which they don't do it lightly, because it's not always the best thing to feed wild animals, because in the long term they often become dependent. In this one news article, they reference a similar thing to do with deer, where they fed deer in a certain area, and sort of in the next few years they ended up spending longer in this area, because they're expecting a payout in the following years. Human-animal interactions, especially deer being hit by cars, increased because they're spending more time around people. They're a bit more confident around people and vehicles. So they're trying to do it as responsibly as possible to, sort of really help out these manatees. And obviously they don't want a similar instance where the manatees are coming up to boats and causing boat strikes in the future. But yeah, hopefully this is going to sort of help them out and get them sort of emergency supplies, as it were. So, but not have any kind of long-term behavioural effects. Now on to my product of the week, which this week is the PandoraLab 0G Lumiline spool. So fancy name because it is quite a fancy spool, and I mean, if you squint your eyes and look at it from a distance, most people would just say, oh, it just looks like a normal plastic spool. What's so fancy about that? But actually, it is quite fancy. The polymer that it's made out of is made to be neutrally buoyant. So if you do drop it or let go of it, it shouldn't go too far. Obviously, it's going to be different in sort of freshwater to saltwater. But yeah, for most diving, it's going to be fairly neutrally buoyant. And it feels quite strong as well. It feels a lot like Delrin, if you know what Delrin is. But I presume it isn't because they haven't mentioned the name. But it's nice and strong. It doesn't feel like the normal plastic that you get a finger spool made from. But also the line itself is quite fancy. It's Lumiline, which again, it just looks like white line, round, sort of 2-3 mil line. Don't think too much of it, but actually it glows in the dark. So if you shine your torch on it, just like your gauges or something, it actually glows in the dark, which is pretty cool. Mainly useful for sort of night diving, obviously. If you send up a DSMB and you've got that line in the water, you can't quite see it unless you shine your torch on it. Whereas this, it glows in the dark, so you and other divers can see it, and it makes them less likely to sort of get tangled up in it. But yeah, very nice spool. Definitely worth sort of looking out for. And yeah, it's just something a little bit different, and it's got a nice sort of class to it as well. It's not your basic sort of plastic finger spool. So yeah, there'll be a link for it down in the description below. And on to this week's question. So this was actually, I think I was driving my dogs to the local park to take them for a walk, and I was listening to a discussion on the radio, and it was all about when is it time for when you get too old to drive, to hand in your car keys, and we were listening to this lady, and she was outraged that she was pulled over by a police officer because she was doing 34 in a 60, and she couldn't understand because there's no minimum speed limit, so why should I get pulled over? And it is actually, well, you're creating a bit of a dangerous spot there, because if everyone else is doing 60, you're either creating a bottleneck if there's a dual carriageway, or worse if it's single carriageway and someone's doing 60 and you're only doing 30 if they're not paying that much attention. Yeah, it's just... And that made me think about scuba diving. When's it time to sort of hang up your regulators and not go diving again? And I mean, I know a fair few older scuba divers, shall I say, if that's the most politically correct way to say it. But yeah, scuba diving is quite handy in that it's an activity that isn't always that physically demanding. It can be physically demanding, and I'm going to touch on that later. But yeah, for certain diving, yeah, actually, no, it is quite chill. One of the main sort of concepts is to do things as slowly as possible and as sort of easily as possible. So whilst there's no real upper age limit for learning to scuba dive neither, you have minimum age requirements. You don't really have maximum age requirements, but it is performance based. So you have to be able to do everything independently. And if you can't physically or mentally do it, then you won't get signed off. But yeah, if you can still mentally and physically keep up and do everything that's sort of demanded of you, then yeah, there's no reason why you shouldn't be scuba diving. It does need to get to the point where, especially if you're sort of relied on, because that's one of the main things, is that when you're diving, you're always diving as part of a team, part of a buddy team, and your buddy is relying on you to help them if they are unresponsive for whatever reason. And if you can't do that, then you do need to sort of really sort of look at yourself and think, okay, maybe is it time that, yeah, I either only dive with a professional sort of diver, sort of dive master and above, who can sort of look after themselves, as it were, where I'm not responsible for them should something go wrong, or yeah, sort of hang up your regulators. And also physically as well, this is the hard one, in that there's no definitive like red light that suddenly goes off, and you do see quite a lot of it in the news, where scuba diving can be physically demanding, and it can be a bit of a shock and just that extra work on your heart. If your heart isn't in the best condition, then yeah, it can have very serious outcomes. And we do need to really step back, talk to our doctors, and be brutally honest with ourselves and say, right, well, my heart isn't in its best condition. Okay, I do love my scuba diving, but I do have to sort of stop. I've had amazing experiences. I've seen some amazing things, but enough is enough, and I don't want to run that risk. Because I mean, we've had sort of big campaigns here in the UK. I don't know whether it's happened sort of elsewhere around the world, but yeah, sort of considering your sort of heart health. And I mean, we actually had a one of these machines that you sort of test yourselves on at the Simply Scuba Dive Centre. This was a few years back, but yeah, people coming in, they could sort of quickly sort of log on, do a quick sort of test on their sort of heart health and all that kind of stuff, BMI, all bits and bobs. But yeah, just to make themselves a bit more aware on their heart health and when was the last time that you actually were sort of checked out by your doctor. Yeah, that's kind of the time when you do start to sort of struggle with anything or the smallest red flag, because you basically want to have that like event where something happens and you suddenly realize that, oh yeah, my heart maybe isn't 100%. It's not as it was when I was sort of 18, 20 something years ago. You want that to happen on dry land, where you can get access to sort of emergency medical care. You don't want that to happen 30 meters underwater, because that's much harder to get a positive outcome, shall we say. So yeah, if you are sort of wondering if lockdown sort of hit you pretty hard and you sort of haven't kept up with your sort of physical fitness, then yeah, maybe it is time to sort of at least have the conversation, especially with your like family medicine, your GP, doctor. Have a chat with them and just sort of go through it and just make sure that yeah, your ticker is up to it, and if it isn't, don't push it. It's really not worth it. But yeah, as far as upper ages, yeah, if you can still do it, as long as your doctor says, yep, you're fine, then keep going. I mean, I know sort of commercial divers who are sort of getting up there and still, yeah, first in the water and last one out, just very tough, demanding work. But yeah, they're physically and mentally up to it. Yeah, keep going. But unfortunately, it can't be one single rule for everybody. And that's the same with the minimum age limit. You can't just say, well, yep, now that you are, I don't know, 80, that's it. Stop scuba diving, because there are 80-year-olds and there are 80-year-olds. The same way that there are some 10-year-olds that can do scuba diving sort of perfectly well and adequately, and I'm very confident signing them off. And then there are other 10-year-olds where you're like, you know what? No, sorry. Junior doesn't have what it takes yet. It's hard to have that one specific age blanket rule for everybody. It's really down to you to turn around, look at yourself and go, oh, you know what, no, now is my time to stop scuba diving. Yeah, I think for a lot of people it's just when they look at their twin set and they know they have to pick their twins up and put it into the back of the car. But yeah, it's very much up to you, and you have to sort of make that decision. And if this conversation is making you think, maybe that's me, yeah, it's worth spending a few minutes with your doctor. Obviously you're going to spend like half an hour in the waiting room beforehand, but spend a few minutes with your doctor, or better a dive doctor, and just have that conversation. Just say, oh, okay, I've been wondering, I'm getting on a bit, I'm thinking, is my heart up to it, and I just want you to sort of check me out. And they'll put, I mean, I've had it before for my scuba diver HSC medicals and stuff, where they make you do all sorts of different tests and stuff, and put one of those what do you call it, EC chest rig thing on, and they sort of check your heart out and all that kind of stuff, make sure you're all fit and healthy. But yeah, I'd rather find out there than 30 meters underwater. And that's it for the podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, what did you think? How old is too old for scuba diving? Let us know down in the comments below. And anything that you thought about the documentaries, the Becoming Cousteau and the Rescue. If they're available where you are, what did you think? Have you seen it? And any interesting news articles. If you've got anything interesting that you've done, let me know down in the comments below, and you might get featured in next week's show. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to all that social media stuff. Rate us and comment and all that. It just helps us to build the channel and reach more scuba divers. And head over to simplyscuba.com. Yeah, we got those 2 amazing deals. I'll put links to them down in the comments below, so you can go straight to them. Otherwise, just head over to the website. If you are buying something, we've got a few things that can help you out. We've got Klarna, which is like a 0% finance option. Just makes it a lot easier for you to buy the more pricey stuff. You can break up the payments. We also have Adyen, which helps encrypt your information when you're buying from Simply Scuba, so your information is safe. Don't forget to check out the 2 Minute Foundation. We work quite closely with the 2 Minute Foundation. They do some amazing things to encourage people to just spend 2 minutes of their day, whether they're walking along the beach or wherever they are, just to sort of pick up a little bit of litter, because it is never beneath anybody, and it does benefit the local environment. If you do have any questions that you want me to answer, let us know down in the comments below. If you use the hashtag AskMark, it just means that I'll find it that much easier, and I'll probably mention it in the Friday show. Thank you for listening, everybody. Before long, we'll start to get some other voices on the podcast. We're looking at Greg as well. If you remember Greg from when the podcast sort of pretty much started, we're looking to get him back. It's just a matter of getting hold of microphones and stuff. And nowadays, with sort of the new Omicron variants, it's not so easy to travel backwards and forwards, or responsible to travel backwards and forwards. So we're working it out. We've got plans. It's just a matter of sort of making something work. Thank you for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.